I'm Maryam Elahi, the President and CEO of the Community Foundation of Eastern Connecticut, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to our third annual legislative debrief, where we talk about the great gains at the legislature, where we could do better, what we want to deliver for our community in the coming year. And we're very happy to have a panel of legislative champions here with us this morning. Our experts determine 4 strategies to get to our goal to end child poverty here in Connecticut. We've had successes. The first year it was the paid family medical leave. The second year, an endowment was established to ensure that childcare would be provided for families making less than $100,000.
With 2026 obviously being an even-numbered year, the Connecticut legislature just completed a short session. This year's jam-packed short session ended May 6th. So here we are, a week and a half after the close of the 2026 session. As you reflect on the school breakfast, do you see us getting closer to free and healthy school meals, including lunches and snacks? And what do you believe will be the best way to sustainably fund free school meals for all?
We took one step, we took one bite of the apple, let's say. I got a line item in the budget to pay for a student meal debt across all the schools in Waterford and Montville. I never want to have to get that line item in the budget again. Why are we, as a state, allowing this debt to accumulate? That is not a sustainable way of going about this. Up to 9 or 10 other states in our country already have implemented universal school meals. We had it for 2 school years during the earlier part of the pandemic, and it worked wonderfully. We have very excellent models from all around the country, including our neighbor to the north in Massachusetts. They fund universal school meals, breakfast and lunch, through a 4% surtax on incomes after $1 million a year. That's very obviously sustainable. That's also completely fair when you have people in that wealth and tax bracket getting their taxes cut by over $1 trillion at the federal level.
Are there other considerations for supporting vulnerable populations who lost their SNAP benefits with HR 1?
Many people floated the idea that we would use food banks to fill the need for supplemental food. I don't think that that's what food banks are designed for. They are designed to help out, but many people, in particular veterans, people with autism, people who take care of children, they are working. So they can't make it when food banks are open. Those that were autistic saying, we apply for a job. Nobody wants to hire us. Why don't we establish a program that gives people job coaching, job training, and provide them the benefits that they're losing until we can figure out what's going on. And if that person is not capable of getting a job, then we can prove to the federal government that they can't get that job. And that would provide us with the documentation of what's going on. So that's why I called it a bridge program.
We'd love to hear your thoughts on the fully refundable $600 child tax credit.
Just to say, one of the other victories we actually did have was an additional $250 per family for families who receive the earned income tax credit in Connecticut. That's not a lot. That's not what we were looking for. We were looking for, and are still looking for, $600 per child. So every step forward matters. And if you don't have $250, it's a lot of money. You've had to buy tires recently, or fill up your gas tank, or even just buy groceries, right? $250 will go some ways for the families who do get that. So let's remember that was a step the right direction. But as for the child tax credit, we are the only state that has a state level income tax and does not have a policy of some kind, a child tax credit or other, to offset that for families. New York has a child tax credit, Maine, New Jersey, Massachusetts, Vermont. We're very much an outlier. In Connecticut, about 40% of households are working to make ends meet, or falling behind, are putting expenses on their credit card that they're not going to be able to pay back. Consumer default is up in America. You're doing things that are unsustainable in order to cover the cost of utilities, to cover the cost of rent. About 30% increases in rent in the last 5 years, just to keep a roof over your head. And that's before utility increases, it's before the 30% increase also in the cost of food. There's a really good argument, a really good case to be made that the challenge for families is having enough income to cover the necessities. And a really good and direct path to help them is to give them a child tax credit. The studies show that when families get this additional money, they spend it on the things that their children need. And we're the only state that I know of that consistently brings in more tax revenue than we spend. For some of the families we work with, it's a little bit like saying, well, kids, no dinner tonight, but the good news is we're making an extra mortgage payment. Columbia's research shows that if we do as a state decide to prioritize the needs of struggling families, we would actually generate $5 in benefit to the state of Connecticut for every dollar we spend on child tax credit.
What role did the coalition building that took place over the past year play in building momentum for the legislation? And what can happen between now and next year at this time to bring this important legislation to the finish line?
The coalition is led by the Connecticut Tenants Union, Connecticut Fair Housing Center, Make the Road Connecticut, Partnership for Strong Communities, and I think its strength is recognizing that coalitions need a lot of soldiers, and in terms of strategy for next year, we don't know yet. And I think that that's actually a strength that as a coalition partner, a lot of us, we're ready to have those conversations because we believe in the policy. The bill had considerable support in both chambers. Senator Marks and Representative Felipe from Bridgeport, they're very strong advocates for this bill. We know income gains have not kept pace with rent growth. There's no question that communities' resistance to allowing more housing makes rents go up. I think this year the age of first-time homebuyer is 40, unprecedented. But so is the coalition building that's really strengthened the just cause eviction protections.
Early Start Connecticut program. Can you give us an overview of where it's at today and where you expect it to be in the coming year?
The lack of a national investment in this thing we call early childhood, and it falls on the backs of parents and families trying to do the best for themselves and their loved ones, being asked to pay for the cost of childcare that rivals or exceeds their rent or mortgage. You cannot have a conversation around upward economic mobility, economic opportunity, economic development, unless you begin and end every one of those conversations on childcare. It took a pandemic for us to realize 1 out of every 3 workers in this beloved state of Connecticut has a dependent. You don't have childcare, you don't have a workforce. One of the most critical barriers for working adults here in Connecticut was the limited access to affordable childcare. One of the biggest wins last year, the establishment of an early childhood endowment. If you know anything about the science and education of early childhood, there is more going on neurologically, physiologically, from prenatal to age 3 than the remainder of the entire human experience. Mental health begins in early childhood. How we not only support, but we empower families to raise today's and tomorrow's leaders. All roads begin at early childhood. Connecticut is now a vanguard for this country to learn from because of the legislation last year around the Early Child Endowment Fund. And kudos to our governor and to our General Assembly by investing $300 million into this endowment. That once you get to a point, it can weather the storm so all young children can thrive and be ready to succeed in school. And we can truly have a conversation where we're attracting families to come and plant a pole in the ground and call Connecticut home. The increased supply of childcare that has affordability for families, to what I noted, and then also addressing early childhood settings and the quality of those settings. Last year, for example, we expanded by over 1,000 new slots available for families with a focus on infant toddler and an unprecedented rate increase of 8% to childcare providers to not only attract but to retain an early childhood workforce. My one immediate recommendation for parents and families is get involved within your local community.